Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to this meeting as we reconvene the deliberations on the long-term plan. I'm going to hand over to either Alex or one of his team to talk about how we're going to go through this afternoon.
So I think what we're going to do, and my team will shake their heads if I've got this wrong, we're going to just try and go over what we captured and what work we've got to do from the morning session. And then we wanted to get into deliberations around the topics that we consulted on long-term plan and get a steer from you to feed into the key directions going forward. So I haven't got any shakes of the head. I haven't got nods of the head. I've got quizzical looks. So I'm going to hand over to Amanda.
So we were going to spend the afternoon specifically concentrating on the items that we consulted on. There's 10 topics in the consultation document, just getting a bit of a steer where to from here. So obviously we've heard the outcome of the submissions. You've seen those pie graphs of the majority view and that sort of stuff. So get some clear direction about what you need officers to do and what option we should look to put into the long-term plan budgets that you will see again on the 15th. So we've kind of typed that up really quickly just to get a bit of a steer. And then we've made a list of projects that we just went through earlier that a lot of people have made suggestions about deferring or suggestions of different approaches and that sort of stuff. So we thought we could kind of roll through those and potentially, I don't know, show of hands or something to get a clear direction on whether you want them in or out. So there's some things that SMT has suggested we've put in the budget that's been deferred into 26 or 28 or something. If we could just get a clear steer from everyone in the room, are you happy to do that or what do you want us to do? Yeah. So we have a specific list of projects that it would be good to get clear direction on, and then we can decide where to from there.
We can only give it a go. Councillor Thompson.
Just a procedural question. Are we giving an informal steer or are we going to have to record something formally?
So this isn't formal resolution council. This is an informal steer because there'll be more work. So, for example, things were mentioned around better off funding and things like that. We'd need to do more work on that. The more formal steer you give is actually at the end of May when we go into the key directions, and that's when you give your sort of very formal steer. But this is so that we can take that away, do whatever work is necessary to feed into that formal steer that you give in the key directions.
I don't mean to be contentious, but it is a council meeting. We have an agenda in front of us with a series of recommendations, which include a vote on, say, unless it's amended, and it may well be, agrees on new proposals, including carry forwards, approves, amends, stops, or defers proposals. These are not informal outcomes. These are formal resolutions if these recommendations are put. Now we can decide that we're not going to put them, but if we do put them, they are formal and will need to be voted on as formal decisions.
Could you refer to which standing order is being breached? So I'm not sure.
I didn't say any standing order was being breached.
You called a point of order, Councillor Hopkins. So I need to rule on that, and I'm not sure what which standing order.
Well, the point of order is relates more to the Local Government Act, if indeed you want that level of pedantry. The point is we are participating in a scheduled council meeting. That scheduled meeting has a range of recommendations in front of it. If those recommendations are voted on, then that is a formal conclusion and must be done formally. Now, we don't have to do it, but we then have to decide that we're not going to do it.
So we can spend the time debating what we're going to do, or we can get on with the suggestion, which was informally give us a steer so that you can at some point in the near future formally agree it. Because I don't think you'll be able to formally agree on many of these things because they'll need us to go away and work on it. So you could informally agree, for example, that you want to keep that waters at 15 million. We would need to go away and come back to you with what that looks like or what the options might be in that. You can informally agree to reallocate the better off funding from where it is to waters. We would need to do some work to make sure that where we're at with contracts and things like that as to how much might be able to be reallocated of that. It might be the whole amount. It might be where we've got some contracts that carry over into the next year. So the suggestion is, in terms of process, you informally agree some things rather than formally agree, unless there are some glaring things in there that you wanted to resolve. You've got the ability to do that, but I'll be guided by the chair.
On the basis that the Local Government Act doesn't require us to have to agree to anything within the meeting and resolve recommendations, nor does our standing orders say that. Decline your point of order, Councillor Hopkins.
Well, I still think at some point we're going to have to either vote on those matters or agree that they will lie on the table. Because
so, Councillor Hopkins, I've turned down your point of order. We've had our officers set out the process for this afternoon. The sooner we can get on with that, the sooner we will give them direction. And as has been said, this will help inform a further report back to us and help us make the final decision on each of the listed items. So if we can get on with that, that would be very helpful. Who's taking it from here?
Amanda, well, we were just joining to the meeting just so that we can share our screen with you. Please note this was done at lunchtime, so it is very basic.
Not pretty.
You will see. Okay.
So I'm sure you all recall the topics that we consulted on in the consultation document. So these are in the specific order of the topics, the 10 topics and their numbers. And we've just put it in column C, we just put a bit of a prompt for discussion. And then the yellow highlights are where we need clear direction from you. So the waters CCO, obviously, legislation's changed and we're now required to go out for separate consultation, and there is ongoing separate meetings being held with council. So didn't want to take too much of that time here. We've kind of parked that, and that decision's happening separately. Water metering. So currently, that should be highlighted. Currently, that's in year 9 of the plan. Just questioning whether that timing is right, whether there's any preference to bring that forward. Or so overall the community's replied and said that they're happy, the majority are comfortable to introduce water metering. Is everyone happy with where that's sitting in the budgets in year 9?
In some respects it's a moot point. If water goes off the CCO, they'll make their decisions as to when it happens, and probably they would decide to do it earlier rather than later. But yeah, personally, if we were definitely keeping water, I would be saying do it earlier, because it will save other investment that needs to happen, needing to be done quite soon. So, and if we can get has anyone got any particular opinion that they want to express before we just do an indication?
If we did bring it forward earlier, would it result in reduction to any of the other, if we make assumptions around efficiency gains, would it result in any reduction in any of the capital projects?
No, I mean, you'd need the water metering in for a couple of years to actually change the behaviour, where you could understand the impact and therefore what you can and can't delay. There's not many demand focused projects in the first 10 years. It's primarily focused on renewals and compliance. It's the projects in probably years 10 to 30 where we're increasing capacity both in terms of treatment and storage. They're the ones that will have a real impact from the water metering, and there's no projects or no major projects in the first 9 years that relate to those things. So plenty of time to allow for the impact for that.
We do have some significant funding allocated to leak detection, and this would actually aid that. Potentially, you may be arguably better off investing in meters than the leak detection program, because they will help find the leaks. But so, Councillor Blackler.
No, that's fine. That's a good point you make.
Okay. Councillor McCone.
Just take that further from the point you make, Gareth, and Paul, I agree with what you're saying, but the repairs and maintenance of the business as usual should reduce dramatically once you stop finding your leaks and bits and pieces. So your maintenance will drop, and so will your delivery systems cost.
So, on a principal basis, people are happy to bring it forward.
No.
Yes.
It's an indication that those who are in favour of putting it earlier in the 9 years. And not. So it's 50-50.
No.
Well, sorry, Jim, you're counting people who put their hand up for yes.
You put your hand up twice.
Okay, well, I saw all of the hands go up for one or the other option, and it was 50-50. It's like, we don't, we've got to acknowledge we don't have everyone here, but, it is divided. So just if we leave it at no change, then it is a moot point in many regards.
Yeah, just to clarify with Water's CCO, is everyone comfortable that I just leave it at no change? So we're on the assumption that from 1 July 27, we're moving to a separate CCO, whether it be our own with someone else or whatever. So that's what we've built into the budgets right now. Is everyone comfortable we leave it like that?
Well,
Now?
my statement to that would be that wouldn't that position there come about as a result of the consultation we're about to undertake?
Yeah, definitely, which is what I said, we're parking the decision, but for now, if I just leave it as it is, not change the budgets whatsoever. So what you see on 15th of April is going to be still showing Water's gone after 1 July 27, if everyone's okay with that.
Yes. Okay,
so the community was quite keen to invest more in stormwater coastal protection. So currently we have it's one of the first projects on the listing, stormwater ramping up from 2030. Just questioning whether you would like to bring that forward.
I would certainly like to see Muddy Creek, which we've talked about a lot, and I think agreed to manage better at least once and then pulled back because of cost. I believe that should be dated and costed more explicitly and specifically.
Sure.
I'd like to see taking that to 2041. I don't think it's actually necessary right at the minute, and we've got legislation coming along that's going to dictate what we do and have to and may have to do. It hasn't come out yet, so the longer we leave it till the government decides where they're going, the better.
We know we have an immediate problem. I think there could be some targeted work done, which and it's mainly an urban problem with that. But there needs to be some work done, I believe. We're partly Oamaru Creek, but as Councillor Hopkins says, Muddy Creek and the issues around flooding. I don't think our ratepayers will thank us too much if we get their houses flooded again. Tim?
Oh, yeah, I'd support that. Yeah, I also had a question regarding this. It triggered during the you know, how we had the list of requests that came about as a result. And forgive me if it's there and I just haven't seen it, but it reminded me there was a few people that submitted on the topic of coastal protection, and the theme of tetrapods came up quite a lot, and we were keen to kind of look into some of those alternative ideas.
Yeah, it was on the list that we went through. You said it wasn't something that was specifically raised at the time, and I can't recall.
So I think the answer came back that tetrapods could be one of the solutions, but it would depend on specific so you need a an engineered design solution for that particular stretch of coast, and tetrapods were part of the potential solutions. I think that's the answer that came back.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was captured since it had been mentioned a few times.
Sorry, can I just point out under roading as well, there is project 4532 is to do with Oamaru Creek stormwater. So there is 143k in the 27 financial year, 428 and 629. So that one is specifically there. No.
See, at the moment, ORC has classified quite a significant part of North Oamaru as a flood zone. And that'll have to be on limbs and all the rest of it. That has an immediate and tangible current effect on residents, ratepayers and property values. And I believe that in itself is reason enough to bring forward work on Muddy Creek.
We can talk to officers and bring that as part of the discussion on the 15th. Because that could be part of the roading levels of service, and I guess the waters discussion as well. Deciding whether you want to put a specific budget and what level of budget and what timing that would be for a specific project for Muddy Creek, or whether we do it as and when necessary. So we don't have budget aside for it, but we do like more reactive work. So it's kind of like a whole strategic discussion we can have on the 15th about the approach to that.
Sorry, okay.
Can I add further to that? It may already be in one of those projects that we're just unaware of that detail. So we'll just reconfirm that and come back to you on that. Sorry.
Just to kind of add to that, this is one of those types of topics that if we run it through our prioritisation tool, will not flag as a as a high priority, because it only looks at the level of impact in one year. Am I right? Is it still structured that way? Number of people impacted across 1 year, but like this is kind of a more longer term, 50, 100 year type thinking. So I think we do need to think about it slightly differently.
Okay, but in terms of stormwater in general, like not a specific budget for Muddy Creek, is everyone comfortable with where it lays in the long-term plan project listing at the moment?
Well, with the provision that I share Tim's view, we had submitted saying, look at groins, they've been very effective. Somebody else proposed mangroves, which might be a bit far-fetched, but I mean, I believe we have to say at some point there are certain portions of the coast that we believe are worthy of protection, that we need to look at, innovative ways to achieve that outcome, and if necessary, persuade regional and national agencies to support us. So as long as we do factor some of that research into measures we haven't explored so far, I'd favour it staying where it is.
Okay, in terms of Beach Road, so obviously we consulted on a few different options. There's various figures in the consultation document. And we also had some good steers from submitters that came and spoke in person, and also a lot of people put thoughts into their written submissions about Beach Road and potential options, walking tracks, cycle tracks, various levels of road that we want to put there. Yeah, so I think that whole approach needs a good amount of time to discuss on its own. So we're proposing that we bring that back to the 15th of April, take a good half an hour on the 15th of April. We thought we might start from the top with like the bare minimum if you did nothing. So like the way if the road was closed, you would still have to compensate, like some landowners still need access put in and things like that. So what the bare minimum approach is, and then if we turned it into a walking track, how much extra would that cost? A cycle track, how much extra would that be? If it was a paper road around where it is now, how much extra would it need to be? If we needed to buy neighbouring land and make it a bigger road or whatever, like step down the different approaches, and you can decide what level of investment you want to go down to. Does that sound like a reasonable sort of approach?
Yeah. It's a complex one with lots of different options, and yeah. So yeah. Everyone happy with that? Yes.
The main point is we are happy to have a discussion in depth on the 15th of April. We have not made any predetermined decisions prior to that discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. We also consulted on setting up a separate, like splitting the penguin colony and a tourism or economic development CCO. So there was very divided opinion. I think it was like 34% for, 29% preferred the status quo. Quite mixed results from consultation. So we were wanting a bit of a steer where to from here in the next couple of months. What are you wanting to do? What do you want to build into the long-term plan? Do we want to keep persevering with the CCO or not?
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I did mention this yesterday, and I expressed the view that I was quite surprised how many people supported option B, given the very negative response, perhaps predicated on misunderstanding last year to the joint venture proposal. My own view, we had quite a considerable discussion this morning prior to lunch about tourism and about the quantum of monies available for all manner of tourism and wayfinding proposals. And it is clear if we're looking at the future and affordability, that we have to evolve and develop new revenue strands. And I think the idea of having a new EDA or company for the penguin colony, which was our preferred option, I think we should continue to look at that and explore the feasibility and optimal arrangements for such a new EDA and new company, and sustain ourselves with some confidence on the basis that there's only 5% difference between those who favoured the status quo and those who supported the new initiative. And I think that level of, or that margin is sufficiently close for us to actually have confidence in at least continuing to explore the possibility. It doesn't commit us to doing it, but I don't think we should get gun shy on the basis of that response. I think we should actually embrace that 29% and say it's arguably more positive than we expected it to be based on what was said last year, and we are going to continue to explore the option.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Just, I guess echoing Councillor Hopkins' feedback, and also if we break down the submissions that we did receive, in support of that, our business community was in support of that, and I think we have to support them, because that's what we're looking at.
Councillor Bells, then Councillor Blackler. Oh, sorry, Councillor McCone.
Look, I think we need to do something in the EDA space, and I think we have to also remember it's not just tourism. It is the whole business community. And there are many, I think sometimes when we talk about EDA, everyone links it straight to tourism. That's only a very small part of it. And in other areas, we see multiple ways. And, you know, I would have perhaps liked to see whether we consulted on the fact that would businesses be happy to pay towards subsidising one, because I know that many that I've spoken to probably would.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm aligned with all the previous views. The way I see it is there's real benefits for the Waimaro Blue Penguin Colony to be split out, and my preference would be that it would be a charitable entity that delivers by the environment, for the environment, benefit biodiversity outcomes, and just the general backyard experience for ratepayers. So, and then, you know, on the flip side of that, you've got the EDA off to the side, which would have a wider focus on all things rather than just tourism. And you know, we've had the opportunity to hear from Councillor Cowles around his experiences visiting various or at least one EDA in detail up north, and I think there's some good examples of the way other entities undertake the work. And I also think you know, when we spoke to Timaru about the way their organisation was structured, and it had a separate arm for tourism, and I think that's the piece of work where you know, we talked earlier about getting all these kind of tourism strands aligned and working together in the way we fund them, and I think that's the opportunity where the Geopark could slot in and deliver that on behalf of the EDA, say, as like the umbrella organisation that helps facilitate and lead the tourism outcomes for the wider district. I see it as a good opportunity to reset, realign, and try to remove some of the duplication.
Councillor McCone.
I like going last because it's all been said, and I totally endorse what everybody has said. It realigns with, we have a focus of where we can put funds in that are required to be funded if we agree to do so, and it's up to that organisation to see how it works and where it goes to.
What you're trying to question my out of the I'm not sure we get it resolved.
So I'll go against the grain. We're looking at how we save money. We're looking at levels of service. We're looking at cutting existing services. There's a lot of work that's gone on into the ED strategy and getting it to where it is. But yeah, when we went out, we didn't say, yeah, do you like the idea of an EDA, and are you happy for it to basically cost $1.5 million a year? And that's the rub for me. And so, you know, people were answering it without that qualification, and arguably a lot of that money left in people's pockets would create good economic development as well. I believe we can deliver on some aspects of the strategy, but we just can't afford to be delivering on the whole 5 threads, or even 4 of the threads that are in there. So I'm not supportive of that. I think I'm open to the idea of the penguin colony going off into a separate CCO. I think personally that we can do a lot for our economy by creating a property CCO where we manage our property efficiently and for the benefit of the community, but not at the cost that it's currently costing. And these are all things that are sitting in the operational budgets, which we haven't got yet. So, you know, it will be clear at that point about what are the real costs of these services. You know, we need to strip out $10 million to balance budgets. If we got rid of the property deficit, that would be a good start towards that. So, sorry to go against what everyone else has been saying, but I just have very much in mind on, you know, we've got some real issues on the one side that we can deal with. We've got a strategy which we might be able to deliver the outcomes that are predicted for that, but we have to do it at ratepayer cost. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. You are entitled to your own opinion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
The thing for me is in the EDA space, the presumption, well, not only EDA, but a lot of the organisations who seek funding from council, is the presumption that we can assist by paying the bills. I believe we should be more focused in removing the impediments for the private sector to get on and do what they need to do. And I see an EDA role in that space.
Councillor Holding.
Just to add to the conversation, but not the position, just hearing the same councillor speaking for support of creating an EDA, but then on the hand into earlier conversations, taking all the money away from those projects which are district wide to benefit to the strategy put toward us. That's just a wee bit confusing. But
Okay, so overall, I think we agree we're going to continue investigating. And you will hear more. So in terms of selling property, I think the overwhelming result was to go ahead and do that. They want us to test the market.
52%.
So there's a lot of properties there. They are the ones that there's not too much legislative loopholes or anything to jump through. So supposedly should be straightforward. But they're a lot. We can't just dump them all on the market in year one. So we are proposing, there's about $6 million worth of property there. Maybe looking at, if we build it into our budgets, that we look to sell a handful of them each year to the value of like 500K to $1 million. If we choose half a dozen of property, go through and work out a forward plan the next 5 years, sell a handful each year to work through that program of work, so that brings in some income to make the property department more profitable. Is everyone okay with that approach?
It was a sample lot. There's no mention of the lots we have around the harbour that are very saleable and actually provide economic benefit, economic development opportunities. So I would, you know, we shouldn't be restricting ourselves to that. And I don't know that was the intent, but
so
yeah, we can do better.
Intent. You've got a property strategy. All the properties were being classified. I don't know whether we've actually classified every single property, but yeah, they'll be classified. And I think, yeah, we'd come back, if you're agreeing to this approach, we'd come back with a proposed programme of, you know, disposals and what it might look like each year. And
again, I will talk about the property CCO. I think that is something that will deliver those better than what we're currently able to do in-house. So as much as I wanted us to consult on that, and we haven't, I think it needs to be flagged as an opportunity that can bring benefit. And just to get an idea, like, do you know what the deficit is each year that's coming from our existing property activity?
So when we did the property strategy, it was about overall the net cost of property was about 1.5 million. But how that aggregates out in terms of, you know, operational property and non-operational property, I think we'd need to sort of delve into the detail of that and, you know, see whether it's changed in that time. But also add that, you know, investigating a property CCO, it needn't be exclusive from this. I think there's a need to, you know, get some funding in now from property that isn't delivering enough value to your ambitions as a council. And yeah, we can still have a look at that commercial property CCO as part of that wider look at, you know, CCOs and how we use them.
Yeah, and that's why I said no to the idea of $500,000 a year. The sooner we actually, if we're going to sell it, and acquire money that we can invest in revenue generating activities elsewhere, or say the Whitestone dividend, whatever, the better. So my view would be you sell as much in any given year as you can and build the fund up as quickly as possible. And rather than just say, oh, we'll only do $500,000 a year, it might be appropriate to get some advice from a real estate pro who may say you could sell a whole lot in a year and it wouldn't affect the value of each individual property at all. So, I mean, the key thing is the extent to which the number of items, the number of properties on the market impacts the value of each of them individually.
So there's a practical side to that. We've got so much we can process in a year because we've still got the rest of the property program to deliver. And even if we get an agent marketing it, there's still work for our team to do in negotiating, finalising agreements and such like. So I think there is an upper limit of what we can do, and I think we need to work with the property team. Say on top of all the other priorities you have, and they've got plenty of priorities. We've got priorities on top of priorities. What could a program look like, and then come back to you on that as to what's a realistic program. It's not just about the market; it's about our capacity of a relatively small team to do that on top of everything else they've got to do, including sorting out the airport.
An excellent argument for a property CCO. Councillor McCone and Councillor Holding.
Property is one of those things where you meet the market, and it's as simple as that. So if it's good, be prepared to sell more. If it's not, just be prepared to sell it. But I think the sooner we start moving, the sooner we start fixing a few other problems going around. So the cost of running some of these, we do pay rates to ourselves and everything, and that cost has got to be, even if we're not even going to get value for them, we'll start negating some of the costs we're running against. And I think, again, do your homework. So pick 3 or 4, 5, or whatever's easy, and get it underway. And you might only do 2, but you might sell the whole 5. It's what the market dictates. And which then goes back to, I think it's in one of these pages here, that we do chase down legislation to make it easier to sell some more stuff. So we can actually put things together and consign everything. So at least we've got a package and know what we've got.
Jeremy.
The properties that we went out to consult on, they've gone through the sort of civic, of operational strategic surplus. So they're the ones that have been filtered out first. There's not really much benefit to the ratepayer on that as a start.
This first list was brought to you all, I think about September last year, and it was the list that the property team went through. They've got a lot more property, land and buildings. They went through and they classified, I think on a scale of 1 to 5, if I recall, based on the complexities of that asset, whether it had government, acts on it that was restricting any change to that land ownership or anything right now. But as you said, Councillor Holding, or Councillor McCone, that other project in there to look at undoing some of those complexities on that land is something that they are wanting to work through so that they can look at other land to put available to the market in the future, which we'll bring back to you, and that's when that is available. So these were the ones that were more easy to put to market at this time, the easiest list available.
Okay, so you got your response, more or less.
So at the moment, we haven't built in any revenue for selling property, so I will build in some revenue for selling those over the years, speak to property, they can come back with a proposed program of halls. So we consulted on just getting the community's thoughts on whether there was any community halls that they would like to consider repurposing or selling, using for another purpose. We have the overall feedback is not to sell or repurpose any halls, but then when you look at the individual hall level, we have some of them that aren't used very much, and the majority of ratepayers specific to that hall, because there was a question to say, like you only answered that question on your own hall that you pay rates for. And some of them where the majority have said, yes, go and look to repurpose it. So the bulk of the halls are owned by hall committees, not council itself. It's not our decision to sell a hall. So we're going to take all the responses that we've had to do with community halls back to those individual hall committees, and they can do with it whatever they will. Yeah, interestingly, the Windsor Hall has sold during this consultation period. They're looking to build a total span shed across the road. And they've come back to us, and their rates, they've proposed decreasing their rates from $50 a head, a household, to $20. So yeah, they've completely got they're going to have a new building there. They're going to have a lot of cash in the bank and a lot of other options of what they can put their funds towards in that community. And they've sold that hall, and someone else is going to make something of that old building. So there is options there of a hall being repurposed successfully. And I think once we start having those conversations with hall committees, yeah, there'll be some good conversations had. And they, before they sell a hall, they do legislatively have to go and consult with their individual ratepayers of that specific area as well. So just to re-emphasise, council is not selling any halls. We will go back and talk to hall committees about that.
So just a question to councillors. You know, obviously halls and hall committees are special to the communities. Do the ward councillors want to be kept in the loop with any of those discussions happening for those halls within their ward? John?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a decision of the hall committee themselves. You know, they're pretty self-funding. Well, community used, I think, is the word I'm probably looking for. And most of them out there, if they're not being used, will make that decision and say, well, come on, you guys, we just don't want it. Can you do something with it? I have one further question, if I may. Does halls wise, does that include the ones in Oamaru that we own and don't use? No.
No, this is just our community halls. There is no halls in Oamaru in this list.
Councillor Cowles, Councillor Ryan.
A couple of things. No, I don't think I need to be kept up to date. I think sort of have a good relationship with those committees that are doing that anyway. But also, I think this is a very poignant question to go out that actually brought in an awful lot of submissions from, particularly, I know in my ward, very passionate about it, and I learned a whole lot more about what some of our halls actually were used for. And I would like to see some more investment back into some of them, which they have to do themselves, and obviously through but overall it seems to be working really well with a good committee, a targeted rate going back to them, and then being able to choose in their community what they're doing with that. So I'd continue with that model. It's good.
Sorry, just a question. Did we get feedback from all of the hall committees through the LTP process? If not, like, I don't recall sort of seeing every single or represented in comments, but did you have any outside of sort of the formal process in terms of engagement?
So these are individual ratepayers, not necessarily hall committees that have responded. We can't identify what ones are hall committees, but separate to consultation, prior to consultation, I have been communicating with the chairs of every single hall committee, and I outlined what we were going to go out to consult on and what the process would be and that sort of thing. So separately, they have been responding to those emails, giving me direction about initiatives that they're working on, how much they want to set their hall rates at going forward, and all those sorts of stuff. And it's prompted some discussions about, like, a few have asked what Windsor are doing, how they consulted with their community. They could start sharing information. I put a few of them in touch with each other, that sort of thing. So it's been quite useful. Typically, finance has quite a lot to do with the hall committees because we manage a lot of their finances as well. We actually pay their bills. And obviously have to give them their rate funding each year and make sure they know what amount they've got to work within each year. So it's conversations that we have all the time with the hall committees. Another good outcome from consultation has been, because it's stirred people up, they've had a lot more interest in people joining the hall committees and helping, so that's been quite positive as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no desire to be kept in the loop, but I think we have previously spoken about the empowerment of community boards, and I would encourage that they are, or at least the community board chairs, are involved in the process.
Thank you.
Oh, just a quick question on the engagement with the chairs of the community halls. In a general sense, did the views of the chairs align with what the submission feedback was?
We haven't specifically sought feedback, but we can do that.
Oh, no, there's no further work needed. I just wondered if in general terms there was alignment, but that obviously hadn't been explored. That's cool.
But when we do go back to working with the hall committees in this next round, we will be talking to the total hall committee, including the chair of that committee, to discuss those results and to see what they want to do going forward.
Okay, all good. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because we collect the funds for those halls through our rates, it doesn't mean, it seems to be, it appears that we seem to own them, but we don't own all of them, because I'm associated with two halls that have nothing to do with council apart from them, you being the collector. So when you establish the ownership of them, then go for your life, but which wasn't really established in anything that I've seen so far.
I think we know which ones we own and which ones we don't, but
Well, the last list I saw contained ones that you do not own.
Yeah, the list we consulted on included all 29 community halls. Council only owns 5 of them. So legally we can only sell the 5 that we own. We are opening the conversations with the community, the hall committees. We were just best placed to, we're going up for consultation. It was a good opportunity to ask all of the community their thoughts on the community halls. Basically, it stemmed from conversations I was having with hall committee members who were struggling to find people to join their committee. Like there's a specific hall, the last man standing on the committee has left the district. He wants to pass it on. He can't find anyone to pass it on to. So he's asked if we could sell it. It's not our prerogative to sell, it's the hall committee. So we've got the results of consultation, and we'll take all of that feedback to the hall committee, and it's their prerogative what they do.
I think, we need to come back to the primary purpose of doing this wasn't to sell halls. We take $20 or $40 or $50 or whatever off every person in a hall committee area, and we wanted to know whether they value their hall, whether they feel they're getting value for their money, and really appreciate the feedback that we did get. And you'll now go and engage, which is good. Airbnb. Sell them too.
Council housing.
Oh, council housing, sorry. Skip one.
So at the moment we are strategy is under development to be discussed to come back on in September next year. And there is a project penciled in for the 28 and 29 financial years. We're just questioning whether council is happy with the timing of those. So they were originally in the 26 financial year, they've been deferred.
What's the project?
So 4450 social housing development, 2.6 in 2028 and 3.6 in 2029.
Okay, so
there's also the
creating
additional
more
dwelling at Elm Street 729 in the 29 year.
Well, I don't even, I'm not even sure where we're at with having agreed that project overall as to what the purpose was. It was, well, we've got the housing strategy, which I thought we would base it on that, but certainly it's looking at what type of housing is it, whether it's community housing, social housing, first home buyer housing, whatever. So If that strategy has been created, be definitely get that back and see what it says, and make a call on the project overall, I should say. John?
Sorry, man, can you explain that a bit? So are we talking community housing for the community, or we're talking for staff accommodation as well? Just what exactly are we talking about across the board?
Just the community housing. So what we went out to consult on, what was the specific question? We specifically asked who should cover the housing shortfall. So there was a few questions around whether council is the best. Do you think council should continue providing council housing units? Question 2, do you think ratepayers should subsidise the cost of council housing units? And question 3 was, if council continue to provide housing units, what do you think is an acceptable amount for each ratepayer to contribute to subsidise them? And we got really mixed results.
So to me, that was nothing about that project. The project is potentially for more housing maybe in the future. We've got 109 units, is it? And my understanding, and I think most of the submitters would be thinking that we were talking about.
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking in terms of the whole strategy, are you happy with just kind of that status quo? Like, so yes, we've got this feedback, and then it'll feed into the strategy and everything that'll come together in September 26.
It'd be
or
helpful
do you want
if
us to change anything up in the meantime?
Sorry, it'd be helpful if you stripped out the project and put that as separate, because that's additional housing. The current community housing. What's the terms of reference on the strategy itself? I don't know that we've seen any of that. So what are we trying to do with that strategy over and above the housing strategy we already have? So I think we need to have an understanding of what it is, and where it's the future ownership of how best to deliver community housing, whether it's in-house or with an external provider. Joe.
I was just going to add, I think, excuse me, given the recent announcement in regards to community housing providers and the funding that they'll be entitled to access from the government, this situation may change for us anyway, given the amount that we're actually spending on those properties and the fact that they're not paying for themselves at this point in time. I think that definitely feeds into the housing strategy, but more thought needs to go into it given the political environment is changing.
Will the strategy look at the efficiency of how we manage them?
Well, I think to some degree it already has, and there's been acknowledgement that the ratepayers supplement the community housing. It's just council can't be a community housing provider because those are the rules. So there are community housing providers who may be better placed, and I think that's the key question here.
Tim?
In the meantime, I think the feedback was reasonably strong. While the details were mixed, it was reasonably strong that there was support for delivering community housing to those in need. So at the very least, we, leave the current structure in place until the strategy's taken place. But it seemed to me around the shared cost amongst ratepayers, there was a real range of feedback, but it seemed to me that the $20 to $30 mark seemed something that would kind of be a middle of the road response to the consult, or at least the people that participated in the consultation. And regarding the project listed, I think what you mapped out there is perfectly fine. I think I certainly see the next topic being interrelated as to how we might look to fund that project. Whatever kind of funds were generated from Airbnb, which is essentially resulting in a reduction in housing stock for permanent residents, would generate some funds to go towards the servicing of the
principal and interest on a project like this.
John.
So I look at 4450 and 4452, which come into the account on 27, 28, I think, around there. Which I presume also retains to this council housing. I have 3 questions. Do we have a statute that says we must supply council housing? And secondly, as a percentage, where do we sit as a community for supplying that housing? And thirdly, can we afford it? No, I don't think we can.
So there's nothing that says we have to. It's part of the current full wellbeings, and it's existed well before the wellbeings were part of the Local Government Act. But I guess that's why we've asked the community their feedback on what do they think about it. And I come back to the efficiency. I think we're not an efficient deliverer of services necessarily, and there's also the added situation where we can't become an official community housing provider at CHIP, and that's where we need to look at that. So as far as it goes, I think there was, as Tim says, there was good support for us continuing on. Pretty reasonable support for some contribution from rates if required. I'd argue that we should be doing it in a way that's not required, but the other is that other project, which is what Councillor McCone has just referred to, which to me is a distinct project apart from that. Councillor Hopkins.
Very briefly on the matter of whether ratepayers should subsidise the cost of council's housing units. Again, I would simply note that the margins between those who were in favour, 38%, and those who said no, there should be no subsidy, 32%, is quite close. So I think even on the basis that you look at that no vote, we would be justified in actually applying that significant number of people who said no subsidy to the answers regarding the quantum 10, 20, 30 or 40, noting again that the option for $10 attracted 12% support, as did the option for 40. And that was the highest of both instances, and based on the no votes, I'd say go for 10 if we're going to have a subsidy. But picking up on Tim's point about holiday rentals and so on, here you have a very clear view expressed by those who responded to the LTP, the consultation document. 47% favoured council charging a commercial fee on properties used.
Can we just deal with this one project before we get on to that? I know Tim raised it, linking them together, but let's deal with the detail of that when we get into it. I think you've rewritten the question here, but what I think the question is do the community want community housing to still be provided? And I'd leave it open as to how it's provided. It wasn't that council must do this. It's more that it must be there, would be my belief.
Yeah, so I guess I just need a steer for building it into the budgets and into our long-term plan. Is that department still going to be there and be putting staff time aside for that? So I think we've agreed that in general there's no change to the approach. I think public want us to still contribute to social housing some way, shape or form. A strategy is underway and we will know more, obviously, like Joe's talked about, this change in legislation, political environment at the moment. So we'll just leave it as is and time will tell.
Yeah. Guy and then Tim. No, you're not on yet.
Just as a matter of interest, on the 29th of October last year, we met and discussed the same thing, and a business case was required to go ahead with any more conversation on that. Yeah. So we're status quo, aren't we?
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, just in relation to building the budgets and stuff, yeah, I take your point around it. You need a steer. But yeah, I just think we need to ensure that until we find it, you know, if there is an alternative, which we don't yet have one established, we need to make sure that our people are no worse off in the interim. So I think we kind of need to budget on that basis until we find a satisfactory alternative.
And I think the message to the tenants is that they are safe. You know, that the housing is going to continue, and we don't expect any change overall to that. It's just how it gets managed, perhaps, but still to be determined down the track. Is everyone happy with that general notion? Thank you. Now on to Airbnbs.
If I may then, picking up, look, I think you have to hear a very clear vote in favour of council charging a commercial rent on property, or clear support for council charging a commercial fee on properties used for short-term accommodation. 47%, double the number who said no, which was 23%. My view is that this is a clear signal that we can and should proceed with a proposal in next year's annual plan. And that's what I would argue for, that this is essentially community saying, yes, it needs to be done. In my view, the sooner the better, because it could be used to offset housing costs. We may decide to use it for other purposes, but certainly Tim and others have expressed a view that it might be legitimately put to that end. So I just think there's a clear signal here. Let's get on with it.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. I agree that there was definitely a clear signal to for support here, but I think a lot of those people also said that if the administrative costs of doing so outweighed the benefit, then I think that's an important consideration.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I certainly support the intention. I'll come back to Councillor Thompson's comments earlier around farmers supporting tourism. That basically Airbnbs benefit from tourism promotion and so on. There were a number of submitters pointing out how important Airbnbs are. Short-term holiday visitor accommodation is to the market and to provide some flex in the accommodation system, and we're not doubting that at all. Really, it's just around ensuring that there's some contribution from them back to help fund. And I think in this case, arguably at least some of the money, if not all of it, should go to the tourism promotion thing. And if we can if we can actually reduce the rate requirement from that, maybe that can be reallocated towards the social housing aspect. So it just puts it more firmly where I think it's able to be justified and understood by people, and we'll see how it goes. But again, Councillor Ryan points out, that it's got to be an efficient levy to collect, and we need to be able to manage that well. Councillor McCone.
Look, I agree with Rebecca's comments. I do wonder just how careful we've got to be here. We're starting to tread on private enterprise. I understand where the argument comes from there, and backwards and forwards. But if a dwelling has been purchased strictly for Airbnb, then there's probably a case. But if it's part of a family home with a spare bedroom and they're just filling in bits and pieces, I don't know if we need to be in that space.
Yeah, this topic for me I sort of struggle with a little bit. Every other topic we've gone out with, I've had a lot of background information and data to provide where we're going. That's what I haven't seen anything for what I can with numbers, costs, or any sort of information. That's pretty hard to make a decision on.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So this is our first step, just getting a feeling from the community whether it was worth investing any time and effort into getting that data and coming up with an approach. So now we've had the clear steer from the community and the clear steer from you today that we'll go ahead and look into those and take the suggestion that we bring a proposal that'll be considered for next year's annual plan.
John?
Just as an aside to that, so when the pandemic hit, the Airbnb population number almost went to zero overnight with houses that came on the market.
Yeah, I assume, well, and I know this has been done elsewhere, so it'd be interesting to learn from other people, other councils, what they've done in this circumstance. I think Mackenzie, we probably don't want to follow that, where everyone got sent a letter and said, unless you tell us you're not operating one, we charge you. Needs to be something a little bit more directly targeted than that. But yeah, be an interesting to see just what the opportunities are, and not to be punitive or anything like that. It's really just, if you're benefiting from tourism and we're using ratepayer money towards it, you can contribute a bit towards that. Councillor Cowles.
Just having a little bit of experience in this area, we manage 20 that sit on Airbnb for some other people. There is the ability to pass that on to the end user as well and collect that separately. So the platform is moving towards being more flexible, and it's not just Airbnb. There are many private homes on Booking.com and other platforms, and they're all making steps towards having the ability to regionally be able to, it does come down to the person who's managing the property to do it, but to be able to pass that on is very clear that it's a regional fee cost.
Thank you. Okay. Projects.
Okay, obviously we spent a lot of time on projects this morning. We had the whole project listing up on the website for everyone to give us their thoughts on, and that was formed part of the full submissions that we also went through this yesterday and today. From the conversation this morning, there was a few projects where we had a bit of a steer from individuals in the room. It would be good to get a majority view on so that we can decide what to do next with them. So I guess if I just start through each of them. So the Better Off funding, there's a group of half a dozen line items in the project listing that we also receive funding for. And there was a call this morning to look to repurpose those initiatives to get a bit of a steer whether you want to go ahead and do that.
John.
I was actually thinking for a change, but so
smoke signals.
Yeah, can they be repurposed? And also I can't find what I was looking for there before. Do they? So most of them run at the end of this year, and that's it. That's the end of those projects, cut and dusted. 26. Yes, but that's it. That's the end of the funding. There is no input from us at all. No.
Anyone else?
Sorry to Councillor McCone's comment then, we would have to investigate whether they can be repurposed, because there's, as we saw earlier, there were some there for some economic development projects, and there are also some there for health initiatives. So we do need to do the investigation to see if they can be repurposed. That's really what we're wanting to get your steer, is whether we can. Whether you want us to go and look at whether they can be repurposed, and we bring that to you. So.
Councillor Thompson.
I think you'll find one of the examples is the money that was originally allocated to Palmerston was then halved and changed and earmarked as seed funding for the Puketapu track. So there's more than just us involved in the decision-making process. But I'm personally comfortable with us revisiting those to see whether there is room to shift.
We only discussed two Better Off funding lines this morning. we did, well, no, it was the placemaking and I think the ED strategy. I don't think we did discuss the health one, did we? Oh, did you raise that? Sorry, I know we had considered that previously and chose to keep it where it is. I'm not sure that I would support repurposing that one, yet. Certainly with Hannah not being here, because I think she advocated for its retention. But I don't recall us discussing the Pocket Hub track allocation, Jim. So in theory, that would remain as it is at the moment, unless we decide today or on the 15th to actually reconsider that as well.
I'm simply trying to be consistent. If we said that we were going to revisit better off funding, and if there was an opportunity to apply it to water, I think we have to apply it across all better off funding projects.
It's just recognising some areas have had money spent on them already, and wanting to be fair about that too.
So I was going to say, you're not making a final decision today. You're asking us to investigate it. There are implications for it. So, for example, that there's better off funding to housing. We just discussed about a housing strategy. So that's our main resource for taking forward housing issues in the district. I think the Puketapu money, I think it does fit under the placemaking. It was part of that wider package of placemaking. So we'd need to look at it, let you know what's in there and what the implications of shifting any or all of it would be. And then you come back to the decision at a later date.
Thank you, Tim.
I was just going to simply ask, as we progress through this list, are we going to have another round of questions and commentary, or just get a steer? So that was what my.
Yeah, well, I think the more we can get to this, just the steer would be good. We do have afternoon tea break in 3 minutes, so I'll see what we can do to get done.
So the suggestion was that we weren't going to relitigate and re-question everything again. I think, yeah, we might lose some people from the room if we go through that process again. It was just these things came up. Do we need to make sure the windows are locked? That's why I question the doors are locked. These things have been discussed. We didn't get a clear direction. There were lots of views expressed, and we just were trying to confirm the steer, not to re-go through all the questions again, because we know there's many questions, and it's just the steer of what we do next with these based on we didn't get a clear steer this morning.
I do have, if I may.
No questions, we're just after a steer. There's no questions, it's just a steer.
Well, it's not a question about these projects, but it is a question about the other very substantial list of financial requests that we haven't as yet considered. We did discuss a number of them yesterday.
So we covered those yesterday, Councillor Hopkins. We've got a steer on all of those.
No, you didn't.
We did. We got a steer on those. We're not going back to those now. Once we've looked at the steer on those, we'll come back to them at a later date. But we got a steer on all of those yesterday. We're not proposing to go back to those this afternoon. We'll go back to those.
Nor was I proposing to go back to them. What I wanted to ask, and you've answered the question, was when are we going to go back to them? And you've said that'll presumably be on the 15th. Is that correct?
I think we'll come back to them at one of the April ones. The first April session seems to be filled with roading and waters and better off funding, and so it'll be it. And obviously we've got the operational budgets as well. So it might be the second April when we come back in terms of what we found and where that fits into the wider picture.
The 15th starts at 2 p.m. It's going to go through to 2 a.m. It might need, does it need to be, is it 4 p.m. or?
Yes.
3 hours, yeah, so 5 p.m. So, yeah, just so councillors are aware. So we've got 3 hours at that time. So we need to be mindful of that. Councillor McCone.
Focused.
So just investigate repurposing. I think it's pretty simple. If there's a cost and the timelines aren't there for you guys to do it, we just leave it as it is and we just investigate what goes on further down the track.
Okay. Right, we're going to have a break for 15 minutes. We'll be back at 3:15. Sharp. Right, welcome back everyone, as we carry on with our long-term plan deliberations and councillors, thank you. Right, if we get back into it, who's going to talk about the next bit? Looking over towards Amanda and Mandy. Amanda, thank you.
So I guess just carrying on through the list, we I think overall we concluded before afternoon tea that better off funding, we will leave it where it is. So just bear in mind, yes, there's those projects listing there, but we are getting the compensating funding, so it's a net return.
No, it's not our
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need a steer from the room, whether you want us to go back and look into whether we can't promise that we can, but whether you want us to look into repurposing any of the better off funding line items.
There will be aspects we can do, so we want to know, yeah, we want you to look into what parts of it can we repurpose. There will be, so yeah, we know there are, and some might not be palatable to us either. So, yeah, just having an understanding of that.
Okay, so we will look into that. 15th of April is looking pretty full, and our papers are actually due in a couple of days for that. So, well, I'll pencil that in for the 28th of April. We will bring back a steer on what we could possibly do in that space.
What's the nature of the 15th of April? Is it a council meeting?
The 15th of April is a public workshop to discuss operating budgets. Today we have also added in, I think we'd take a good half an hour to discuss where the waters projects listing have landed, given that we're just eagerly awaiting some change in legislation for wastewater standards. And also half an hour to specifically talk about roading levels of service based on the conversations we had about roading yesterday. And we kind of parked those projects today. So we didn't go into detail into roading projects. So if we specifically look at waters, roading, half an hour for the beach road conversation that I touched on before, stepping through the different options, and also the digital strategy. And I think that fills the day.
Yes, I don't disagree. Can get a new budget for glasses too, please. I just I don't want staff to be rushed to get us the information that we would rather have good full information, and so I'll ask councillors, you know, what's their expectation about how early do they need information. I mean, if some of it can be loaded up as it becomes available, that might be useful, but do we need it a week out, or are we okay with having it by the Thursday or Friday before the 15th? Councillor Thompson.
Is there an opportunity as staff have the information to throw it into a review room that we go where we can read it, and it's not public as such, but and we might just turn up with better questions than if we turn up cold?
Oh, well, the idea was put it just into the normal convene, but it just might be that we have it in different chapters, if you like, that we need to go from one to the next as we go through. But I want to make sure that you've got the time to do it justice. Yeah, and you're not having to rush around and have something less than it could be. Other views? Councillors, are you happy to get information on the Thursday or Friday before the 15th?
Yeah.
And if anything's ready before that, load it in. That'd be good. Yeah. We appreciate all the work that you're doing, and certainly the longer hours that you're working to make this happen. So we can take a little bit of pressure off. That'd be good. Right, back to where you.
Thank you, it's really appreciated. In terms of tourism, so the conversation this morning, I think we had some people add up the line items we have in the last 2 pages of the projects listing. It's about 910K worth. And then there were some suggestions whether that could be halved, and then just have a set cap on how much we want to put into tourism, and then from there they can decide how to allocate it out. Did you want us to investigate that further, or leave it with the status quo how it is in the projects listing?
I believe the feedback was collect them together and have some form of prioritization, and it may be that you have 2 or 3 permutations around the mixture of it. I don't think it's just going to be able to be, well, just halve each of the numbers. It's going to be prioritising one over the other, would be my thoughts. I'm happy to hear from councillors on their thoughts on that. Or Mr. Palmer?
Well, I was going to suggest that the suggestion we come forward from SMT was that we halve the budget and give you some options in terms of how that might look in terms of the division of that. Not necessarily, well, we might include a recommendation in there, but give you some options in terms of what's the balance between Geopark, visitor centre, district identity and such like. Yeah. John, so the aim would be to halve the budget.
Yes, ultimate goal.
I think 500. I agree with that scenario. I think there's economies of scale, for want of a better word, by looking at something further down that line. And I think was it item 4 or whatever it was on the agenda with the Blue Penguin colony. I think that option and lumping all those together should be looked at.
I missed the bit about the Blue Penguin colony.
Selling half the penguins, was it? Did you?
No, but for want of a better term, we have a cash cow there that is based on tourism. So why not add it into the mix?
Okay. So go for it.
Yeah, just a last minute thought. Would there be any merit in the contribution to the community for tourism related activities, whatever the number is that we set, being like a contestable fund that people could apply to for, let's say, a period of 3 years or something? And then the proposition that's put forward to us is, set out and how they're going to deliver on some of the strategic objectives of the council, so that we could see some key deliverables attached to the funding that we distribute out. But I'm kind of thinking some sort of hybrid model that's loosely aligned with the heritage fund or the biodiversity grants or whatever. But it's just an idea. I don't know if it's a silly one, but maybe it's something we could explore what that might look like.
Sorry, is this a new fund or is this using the existing funds instead of doing what you currently in there?
Let's just round the 950 up to $1 million. Say our budget for tourism is 500k that we're coming back to on this, rather than exclusively saying it's for these parties. Is it every 3 years entities have an opportunity to make an application for access to that $500,000 that we've put aside, and it's to be distributed out based on the individual merits of the proposal that's put forward. But the reason I say it's like a 3-year kind of thing, you couldn't do it on an annual basis for. I don't know if I'm just thinking out loud here.
I'm not sure we've got scope to look at it now. I mean, one argument would be that if you were setting up an EDA, that's what you'd be asking EDA to do. You'd say, here's a budget, and these are the outcomes you want to deliver for us within this space, within tourism and economic development, rather than a contestable fund. Because conceivably, these sort of funds would come under an EDA in the future if that's where you went. That's what you decided to do ultimately.
Jeremy.
So we got off topic, but just in relation, it would have been. I know water's not a big issue, but this probably would have been an issue that would have been nice to flesh out as a citizens thing, where actually had all these parties together in the room again, rather than all having a hand up at the last minute or the 9th hour, when we could actually be having some more strategic conversations between all groups.
on the other hand, we were told yesterday that we've got a huge amount of money that has to come out of budgets, and we have to be brutal. And I think Councillor Thompson's mentioned the word austerity a couple of times. And in this instance, we're not withdrawing funding, but I think the one thing we would be able to say to all the groups is we have had to adopt an austerity approach, and there is money remaining. It's less than you wanted, but that reflects the circumstances the community and ourselves are in.
Okay. Yeah, we're not going to decide that one today. No. Something worth talking about further, but I think it probably won't form this next discussion either. The airport.
Yeah, airport. So obviously there's a big capital item requested in there. Just wanting direction. It's 1.3 million in the next year, in 2026. Direction on deferring that, or any thoughts?
My 2 cents is it's worth looking into the renewing the lights using new modern technology, but deferring the runway. General thoughts from councillors?
I agree with you.
Councillor Hopkins agrees. John?
Oh, the first thing is renew the lights, because if you do it after you seal, the job is not really worth doing, is it? The first comment. And secondly, I think we need to pare it right back and just start investigating, or get it underway, or do something to get a CTO or get it out of our hair anyway, so that those that are using it are responsible for it.
Property CCO, did you say? Councillor Linwood. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Blacklow.
I'm not yeah, I may have come across as expressing an opinion on the resealing job this morning. It's more a question. I don't feel like I have the relevant information at hand to have an absolute opinion, but I just would again point out the discrepancy between the kind of internal advice we're receiving versus the aerodrome study, where there was specific reference made to the ability to push things out further on the proviso there was additional monitoring put in place. So I just want us to take another look at that, and from my perspective, and just be doubly sure it's absolutely necessary at this point.
Councillor Thompson, what's next?
I'd just like to go back to a comment I made this morning about opportunities. I believe that whilst the airport is somewhat problematic to us, there are some opportunities there. And I have mentioned to some of you, and I also acknowledge the fact that Councillor Hopkins and I brainstormed this, and it's as much to his credit as mine, but I believe we should be talking to our local MP about the possibilities that can be leveraged off what's happening between New Zealand and India and what's going on at the airport here in Oamaru.
I'd just like to commend this as probably Councillor Thompson's best idea ever that you said. Councillor,
You're a footnote in the credits there, I think.
Councillor McCone.
Be clear, and just to it is, and people in this room have told me they disagree, but I think it's a cash cow and it's something we should look after. It's strategic. We can't sell it. It's there. Reactive maintenance is far more, proactive maintenance is far more than reactive maintenance. And I think it's on the way to grow something big. And secondly, it is a necessary part of our communication. Should the fault line ever blow, we have something we can bring stuff into this area to support the people.
Any other comment? Any other comments? Okay. Happy with that. Thank you.
Dredging was one that I touched on this morning. SMT recognised that we had tried a new approach in 2023 and we proposed deferring that. Did everyone agree with that approach?
That 50,000 can come out of that last line as a result.
It's 15,000.
Fine.
It could come out. Just bear in mind, like that there could be maintenance required that would use it.
So I
If
think
it
that's the annual survey.
Oh, right.
John.
So is that a general specific rate or is the whole rate payers pay for that? And where I'm coming from, user pays sounds pretty good to me.
It's not a reward charge.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the harbour was there because of Corridor, really, originally. But Oamaru's gonna carry the weight for you.
I think partnership pays for it.
The people who put those buildings up are long gone. Many went bankrupt, I think. What are we on to next? So the harbour dredging, yes, there's still opportunities potentially around some third party taking sand out of some of the harbour anyway, if they can use it for something, but that's just a bit of a side issue. But we continue to silt up in the harbour, and it's going to become a longer term issue.
Oh, I see. Say no. I thought we.
No, there was some time, but anyway, I just raised it as something just to keep on the radar. The next one, can we put council office accommodation? Could we keep calling it council accommodation? People don't understand, they believe that's somewhere for people to sleep, and hopefully they're not sleeping in the office. But if we refer to council office accommodation, because that's what it is, it's office space. So it's related to 24 Thames Street. Yep.
Yeah, so this was in the 26 financial year, and just in terms of the finances and resourcing, we thought realistically it wasn't going to happen before 30 June 26. So SMT, along with officers, would prefer to defer it a year, and it's spread over the 27-28 year.
Yes, and
I mean, whether it goes ahead at all is subject to business case coming back. So this is about how do we live within a smaller office accommodation footprint than what we've got at the moment, and reduce some of our operational costs that we currently spend on rents and other spaces.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, even if it just formed the base for a council chamber, which was more accessible to the public, that could be a dialed back version of it as well, rather than necessarily being a chamber and offices. So just put that in as we do a business case, looking at maybe a third option like that.
So yeah, look at options. The object isn't to spend the money; it's to look at the options,
yes,
and then consider what the way forward is.
John.
So it's a study to start with before we go any further, and a business case coming back. So would that include looking at the extra rooms at the Opera House as well as next door, and the cost of what we're leasing at the minute? Will it encompass that whole lot?
So yeah, this budget that's in here is for acting upon the study and business case. So that work is going on at the moment. That's looking at all of our operational footprints and how it might be used. So it is asking the question, to have a more accessible council chamber, would you have it on the ground floor here? Would you have it next door? Would you, have it at the Opera House? And how do we reduce our office accommodation footprint so that we're not occupying lots of other sites outside of this main building? Obviously,
Thank you.
relinquish the operational costs from those as well.
Thank you. Tim.
On the basis orders leaving council as well, that we should see an overall reduction in overheads on some level. I'd be in favour of progressing that work as soon as we have a picture of what the situation is in that regard, and then as quickly as possible trying to roll this project out, because ultimately that's going to lead to a reduction in OPEX. If we can reduce the overall footprint of council housing outside of this building.
There's also the opportunity to become the landlord for a Waitaki office of whatever water entity was the. So yeah, there's a number of different scenarios. Guy, and then Jim.
Well, that was one of the few purchases we've made that I agreed to in the last 10 years. Strategically, it was a great move, and we got it for a good price. We got a good deal out of it. Did you say that we should proceed? I think we should proceed post haste to get it sorted out, but we were bound by the leases that were in existence.
Thank you. James.
Look, I'm picking up on Alex's point. All I would say is, in addition to the analysis that you proposed, or the option regarding the paper regarding the options, I think we should very clearly, explicitly say that we, in this instance, also support the SMT recommendation to defer for a year. Because at the moment, what you've said is, let's look at all the options, but I think we also should be making a decision today that we can move everything out a year. Because you guys have said, A, there's a workload issue, and B, it can be done that way.
So we need a clear view, because we've got, some saying bring it forward and do it as soon as possible, and some saying, take our recommendation. So show of hands or something.
Well, we're talking about feasibility studies. So
no, we're not. The feasibility and options is being done. This is the budget to do something about that. Do you want to put it out?
When's the feasibility study come through?
That'll be within this financial year that you'll get that. You'll have an understanding of the options. What we won't do is still have an understanding of what will happen in that water space exactly. So we'll make a decision on where you want to go, but there's a lot of detail to work through in terms of what does that look like, and what would their office accommodation needs be if the water does go out. They will need some presence in town. What services are we going to provide to that water entity, and what are they going to provide themselves? So there'll be a whole load of other things up in the air that need working through if water does go out of council, if that's the decision made.
So Alex, we could push it out, but would we fund the feasibility and the business case and study on it? Would that make sense?
You're already doing that. The transformation budget's doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is happening. You're not making a decision on whether to do a feasibility. That's happening, and we'll get the results of that back within this financial year.
Right, we should work.
So this is about being, having a budget to act upon that.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realise that was part of the transformation.
So essentially, we will be better informed if we just hold off making that decision at the moment. Everyone's happy, comfortable with that? Yeah. Thank you. Library feasibility.
How many studies do you have to make on the library? You've done that with your.
Okay, can we just bring this back in a little bit, please? Thank you very much. Amanda, please.
Okay, so these are all like the typically smaller projects on that last page. We know from discussion with officers that recoating 1 Thames Street could potentially be deferred a couple of years. They've suggested 40K in 2026 for some maintenance works, like just seal some, that's so it doesn't get any worse. And then in 2 years' time, do the full recoat for 180K. Library feasibility, I think I've taken the room suggesting defer. Chalmers Street entrance is 90K in 2026, whether we defer or remove that altogether. The Opera House re-roof, officers have suggested we remove that completely, and they will come back at a point in time, potentially in the next LTP if it's necessary. Freezer building, we touched on this morning, just need some direction whether you want us to go back and look to request approval to demolish it, or any alternative to what we've proposed at the moment, the 250K. So all of those sort of projects, in any direction we can get on that, those would be great, whether to defer or to move completely.
Couple of quick questions. So the Chalmers Street entrance, which entrance we talk? What are we talking about with that particular project?
The main entrance when you drive into the car park of the gardens. So there's 2 entrances, and you can drive in or out of either of them.
Supposed to just drive in one, drive out the other.
Yeah, supposedly it's not clear and it needs some work.
Paint some arrows. Guy.
Yeah, I don't see the need for it. The only thing I was thinking, 'cause I go past here in and out of town, is the fact that if they restricted parking on either side of the entrance and exit. Yeah, because that's the only thing that restricts your vision. I mean, how many prangs have been there in the last 20 years?
By May, a chainsaw would do a real good job in there too, just open up so you can see, and a bigger sign. It wouldn't take much.
Okay,
We'll take that one away and see if we can, do something less costly or not at all. But still safe.
There are faded, well, according to Google Earth, there's faded arrows going in and going out of each of the entrances. I think most people understand that. I don't understand why we need $90,000. So paint some lines on the road, be my suggestion. Anyone want to spend $90,000 on that? Okay. No, we need to, well, it's important we understand what the projects actually are. What are we up to? Freezer building. So the suggestion is either demolition or partial demolition. So should someone could take away whatever materials they could take away.
What's the underlying zone?
Currently business age, maybe.
What's it selling the site?
So I don't think you could just sell it as it is. Yeah, with there's responsibilities that come with it as a heritage item that's unsafe. So we might have to give someone some money to take it off our hands.
So that.
I don't think you get takers. Liability.
Thank you.
I think we're.
So it's looking at. I don't have any appetite to spend $250,000 just making it safer. It's.
We're just made to
It's already got deer fencing.
The issue is that there is a fence around it, but in strong winds and what have you, the bits that fall off don't know to fall inside the fence. They pose a risk to people that are going by. That's the issue with that. So it needs work on it to make it safe, so that things don't fall on people and vehicles that are passing by the site.
So I agree something needs to be done. I just, don't agree with just kicking the can down on the long-term future of it.
The property department or the list I saw here a while ago has got it valued at $77,000. So to put 250,000 is absolutely ridiculous. And if Guy wants to spend $1 on, I'll put in 50 cents. We'll go half. No problem.
Clear an interest in that.
I think that's all on the public record. Remember, it's a live stream, so that's a deal.
The Opera House roof recommendation is to defer. Everyone okay with that? Yes, okay. Aquatic centre roof. And yes, over here, John and Jeremy.
So both those Opera House and that aquatic centre, has someone actually been up and had a look? Is it just a matter of cleaning up the gutters or what, what's going on? It's very easy to put a number there and say this needs to be done, but how about having a look first or telling us why that decision has come up?
People don't just decide to put numbers in, John. It's based on condition assessments of the buildings and what maintenance needs doing. It's not just we haven't cleaned the gutter and we couldn't be bothered doing it. Let's have a look. The roof needs replacing. It's a case of, do we do it now or do we wait to do it knowing that it needs replacing? It already leaks. Yeah.
There's a ratepayer of mine who constantly reminds me that he's still paying the Opera House off. Are we saying that we're now going to have to repair or replace the roof on the building that we still haven't paid for the last lot of alterations?
Well, we've got money in the Omru Endowment Fund. We could put that to pay off that debt.
Probably one of the few survivors when that project took place. It was recognised when the redevelopment was done that there were parts of that should have been addressed but weren't able to because of budget constraints. The roof over the old building was never touched other than one corner that was leaking severely. Like we had to redo the south side of the entire structure because that was left at the time. So we've known we're going to have to do this. We've deferred the work along to be good.
John.
Look, I don't think we can defer it because the longer you defer it, the more expensive it becomes. If your hat leaks, it creates a whole lot of problems further down the track. So the cheapest way to fix that is do it before it creates more problem. Whether we got to do both of them at once, whatever it is, but I think it would be prudent. Again, I can go back to what I keep saying, to be proactive rather than reactive and fix it.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I sort of have to grow it. That's why I raised it earlier. What is the risk of not doing some of these things versus the benefit? So it would have been good to know if the manager said, no, we have to do it now. That word that it's crucial, but if there's got to be a bigger cost, we're delaying.
So speaking to the facilities manager over lunchtime, the Opera House, he said we could potentially remove and reconsider as part of the next long-term plan when they have more work around like the whole property portfolio. Aquatic centre, he could potentially said we could potentially defer 3 years and decrease to 50K.
Okay. No other comments? It's that breakwater feasibility.
Well, I raised that is because there's another budget line item for breakwater maintenance, which struck me as perfectly sensible and valid. Now, the feasibility study may be, the only thing I can think of is the matter that has been raised from time to time of increasing the height of the breakwaters to deal with seawater, a sea level rise. But I'm not sure that we actually have to do that in the next financial year. And my instinct is that as long as we are continuing for the moment to maintain the breakwater, that feasibility study can be deferred.
And that's correct, councillor Hopkins, again, speaking to the facilities lead over lunchtime, he has advised to defer it till 2028. It is to do with the sea level rise. He's working on the plan now as per the other budget line there for the 200K share for the breakwater maintenance. And he's working on ways to try and see if there's a ability to reduce costs on that as well. So, but as far as the sea level rise, that is the feasibility study that he's proposing to defer to 28 and put 50,000 a year for 3 years as opposed to a million.
The system we've got appears to be working. If just make sure that we keep plugging in holes that appear and keep the armouring there. As far as any rise, I think it's more the big storm events and the impact of bigger waves or more, stormy events happening. So that may be a challenge, but at the moment, I don't think it's a priority for the next year.
You've got Mother Nature on one side and you've got the harbour on the other, and you're never going to beat Mother Nature. And so why do we need a feasibility study? Just if it blows and it's got a hole in it, go and fix it and just get on with it. There's no need to muck around and write a piece of paper to say how, just do it.
The feasibility is just about whether it gets increased in height. Okay, so that is a defer. Okay, what else?
That is the end of our specific list. Is there anything else that anyone would like to question? Any points from this morning that any needed to clarify or anything? And just to summarise, we will come back on the 15th of April. There is 3 hours, about an hour and a half talking about the operating budgets at the department level. We'll be able to delve deep into various expenditure line items and look at how each department is performing, whether they're making ends meet. Coming back to that list above, that'll incorporate a bit of fees and charges type conversations. You'll be able to look at departments and see potentially could their fees be increased to cover their operating costs, considering levels of service at different department level. Half an hour or so on the waters project listing, because we'll know more by then. Half an hour on the roading levels of service, and half an hour on those beach road options. Then we come back on the 28th of April. We have 4 hours. I'll take steer from you on the 15th of April exactly what you want to talk about those days, but there'll be more opportunity to talk about anything you want.
Okay, I got a lot of hands up. So I'm actually going to ask everyone. So I'm going to start with Courtney. Anything? No.
Lee.
I'll let you design it. Jeremy.
For the other 90 projects that we haven't identified on the 8 million there, have you had any feedback from the other managers that they could defer? For the other projects that we didn't pick up out of these $8 million projects, was there any other feedback from managers for other ones that could be deferred 1, 2, 3 years?
I didn't have enough time over the half an hour lunch break to call everyone to do with all of these projects, unfortunately, but I'll do what I can before the 15th of April.
John.
Just a couple, your fees and charges thing, Amanda, as long as you don't touch dog registration, I'm reasonably relaxed with the
That was the specific area I was referring to.
Jim.
First of all, thank you very much for your input today. But item 5633, why in the next 3 years are we spending 200 or proposing to spend 230,000 in the Ardgowan forestry? Or is that actually what we're going to sell the timber for and it's just a mistake, or?
I don't know the full extent of that project, but it's to do with the Ardgowan Dam. What is necessary there? I can clarify that one. Does anyone else in the room know exactly?
Was it something to do with runoff from that area, or? Not sure.
The proposal is to clear the forestry because it's actually basically a hazard. It's not adding to it, and whether it's the cost to do it, but we wouldn't be replanting it, so there'd be ETS credits attached to it, so. Or it's replanting it in more suitable species, because pines around the reservoir are a very bad match, so it's like, there's some detail back in the project, but we'll certainly have a look at that one.
Rebecca?
Nothing specific. I just echo Councillor Holdings comments around, I guess getting a bit more of a steer around what could be deferred. So
Thank you. Brent? Jim?
Well, just apropos of that tranche of submissions, that some of which we have covered, some of which we didn't find a light on a conclusion why. There's a whole lot of stuff on the document we received that begins with 437 Catherine Bennett. There's a number of 2 debate items at the back. And I know there was discussion yesterday, Councillor Thompson amongst others expressed views about funding for the geopark. Now that may have been taken account of with the decisions we've made this afternoon. It may not, because there is at the moment in the long-term plan proposals for 3 years funding at 200,000. So we probably still have to actually address the out years as well as
That wasn't part of
2026.
that was part of the overall visitor funding.
Yeah, and there was vigorous and energetic debate, and I don't want to re-engage with it now, but suffice to say there was a range of views expressed as to what should happen with the OWCT applications and their request to be assigned additional buildings. And there are a number of proposals for cycleways and things of that nature that, as of the moment, we've, in some instances, we did flag a unanimous point of view. In others, there was simply a conversation where differing opinions were expressed and no final conclusion was reached. So I do think know quite how we're going to address that fairly sizable sheet, a list of submissions and requests for funding, but I think we have to have some time over those April meetings to actually just tidy up the remaining or outstanding or unresolved or contentious issues on that list.
So a number of them are basically down to be discussed further, simply. So and we don't want to relitigate everything, whether if it's not on that list, but we want to make sure we do cover off everything that is important. No, you look like you're enthusiastic to say something now. That's all right. Yeah, not allowed to laugh. Guy?
I have 47 highlighted items on the list. But Councillor Thompson asked the most important one, so spoilt my little thing. But I will ask one in lieu of having lost that one. 4551 restricted check program, 150 grand a year over the next 9 years, well, with total 1.350000 millions. Good gracious me, that's a lot of money. Restricted checking in most areas that I've ever been in is an ongoing exercise when any problems occur and repair and maintenance has taken place. If it was possible, when I retire, I'd like to take that job on and I'll do it for half. Thank you.
You'll be busy working on the freezer building.
Yeah, we have strict criteria on who we employ here. Just
my restrict is fine, so it doesn't need to be checked. It just saved us money. Tim?
Just on the comments around the forestry, is the submission number 62, Mike Judd, is that not a request in relation to the same? So kind of the response we've given to that is the opposite of the approach we're taking according to No, it's just that we've said that we shouldn't take the trees out in our response, and then we've got to, unless we're talking about two different areas.
Take all the trees.
I think he was specifically talking around the bike track. We're talking around the dam for that.
Yeah.
purpose.
Oh, so it's not the whole area, it's just a specific area within. Okay, thank you. And that kind of triggered a further thought. Is there a project listed here for the required reservoir or dam work in and around the, the dam
Down.
safety stuff?
Yes, it is there.
It is.
Which,
Yeah.
It's only the work to continue the investigations. We haven't got any idea of what the amount might be to mitigate it. And
what
this-
our approach is going to be.
and we're looking at a couple of alternatives that might be more cost effective.
Okay, cool. No, that's
So just for the benefit of anyone who may be watching this, it's the dam which holds the reservoir itself, and the legislation around high dams and risk assessment on dams.
I had one.
Yep.
That they just came up. My overarching question is, based on what we've achieved today, Amanda, the budget for this year was balanced, wasn't it, at 10.3? So we would be looking to improve on that 10.3 number if we add in the additionals, they're going to be lifting that 10.3 upwards. So we're still, based on where we're sitting at the moment, we're still in excess of 10.3.
Yeah, so if we just think back to my financial update yesterday, there's been a lot of movement since the 10.3. So there was the 20 mil that we have deferred from the 25 annual plan. So that impacts on the 10.3. There internally, we've been looking at all of our budgets. We've been looking at realistically what the revaluations will be and how that will impact on depreciation for next year. There's change in standards all the time. And a lot of changes today. So the 10.3, I did say yesterday, had already increased behind the scenes. I haven't given you a figure, but increased a couple of percentage based on what's happened behind the scenes. But yeah, we're hoping to land there or thereabouts and balance the budget. So yes, we had balanced the budget when we went out for consultation on the 3rd of March at 10.3, but there has been quite a lot of changes, ups and downs since then. And we can let you know on the 15th of April where it's sitting now.
Okay, so with your permission, I would, because this is a meeting, I would like to move that the recommendation contained on page
Jim,
6.
I was just going around the room and I just got to myself. That's okay. Knowing Brent wants to go. One thing I've just got there is, and I mentioned it to you, Amanda, is the opportunity for people to pay off the capital cost of water upgrades and so on. So something we haven't had offered a long time ago, but an opportunity perhaps for people to pay that loan part of whatever work has been done. So it decreases their rates, it decreases to a small degree the amount we've actually got sitting there as debt. And just gives them a bit more control over their annual rates bill. So something like that. There's downsides to it around money going out of the community, not circulating in the community, but also benefits to people who can pay that lump sum off. Other than that, Councillor Hopkins, you want to move?
With your permission, I would just like to move that the recommendation contained on page 6 of the agenda for the March 31, 2025 council meeting lie on the table.
I think we can. I'll move that we receive all of the information we have received, and note that we note all of the submissions, and we have given and request officers note the feedback we have given on those submissions on the through our deliberations.
I'll second that.
Sorry, just worded on the run here. So essentially just reflecting what we have done over this period of time and the fact that we've still got some more definitive decision making to do on it.
Yeah, I'll second that as an alternative, yes.
Okay, everyone clear on that one? I'll put it then. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against, that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's watched the live stream, put up with that ordeal. Thanks, councillors, and very, very much thank you to officers who have put all of this together, often at short notice and under duress almost. So really appreciate everything you've done to help us be as informed as possible, and we really look forward to the 15th of April. With that, declare the meeting closed. Thank you.